Good evening and welcome to Retro Game Revival, an evening with, hopefully start of a new series of interviews. So we're glad to be back doing interviews with people. So we'll get straight on with it, jump straight into it. We'll introduce our guests. And first off, I'll introduce the other RGR panel members. So first off, we have got Ollie.
Good evening. Good? Very good, thank you. Yes, not too bad. Hope you were as well.
Very good. And we've got Blunners.
Hello everyone. Just to know, I have gifted another membership, and that has gone to Mr. Rob Taylor, the one and only.
So, Taylor.
Yeah, well done, mate.
And my phone's talking at me now. I'm going to turn it off. And welcome our guests this evening. We've got Steve Horry and James Lightfoot. Hello, guys.
Hello.
How are you both doing?
That.
How are you guys doing?
Good. Very good. It's a Tuesday. It's not been sunny, but I'm happy here. Love chatting games. So, happy to be here. Steve?
Yeah, I'm all right. Hanging in there. Yeah. It's Tuesday. We're here to talk games. It doesn't get any better.
It's that weird lull, isn't it, after a bank holiday? I always feel like going back after a bank holiday is always a bit of it's all right.
My first coffee of the day has never been so necessary, important, and functional.
Yeah, functional. That's a good word for the first morning coffee. The second one is enjoyable, but the first one is functional.
Yes, the first one is definitely always needed, isn't it? So, I don't know if you want to say hello to some people in the chat. There you go. We've got Mags.
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 Good evening. Who else we got? We've got Kylie.
Kylie. Hello. Howdy, Kylie.
And of course, got Mr. Taylor, Rob Taylor. Always good to see you in the chat.
Ryan.
And we've got Ryan.
Good evening, Ryan.
Good evening, all. So we're here to talk about Sleepytime Village. But before we get into that, we're going to get to know you guys a bit more, and we'll also see if anyone's got any questions for you in the chat. So to get started, we're going to ask about your early gaming memories. So what first got you into gaming, and what were the sort of consoles and games that you grew up with that got you into doing games?
Yep. So ZX Spectrum, it was a 48K, and it was just the best thing ever. I remember sat there and we had some games, and I think someone had given us, and please, the Lord of, or God of games, don't strike me down. We had some cassette copies of stuff where people had put some games on there. I know, terrible. I will.
My backups.
They're backups, exactly.
They're backups.
Yeah, they're backups. So someone lent me their backups for 2 days. Let's go with that. And so I would play some of these games, and I wouldn't even know what they were. I was like, "What is this?" I didn't really know. But there was Match Day, Fighting Warrior by Melbourne House. Hey, Mags, good to see you too. But the Spectrum was my everything. It was just I was obsessed with it, and I just remember playing all those games and falling in love. Trapdoor on the Spectrum, Dan Dare, which was just a seminal game for me. The Magic Knight series, Everyone's a Wally, Spectrum was my everything. And then I guess from there I had a weird flirtation with a C64 far too late in my kind of 8-bit history. I was like Spectrum all the way, and then my friend had a C64 and I kind of got a bit obsessed, so I got one like an old falling apart one just to try out some games on there. Then obviously never did Amiga or Atari ST, went Mega Drive, SNES, Dreamcast, Wii, and then obviously, on we go. But the Spectrum to me will always be the one that I think about.
Yeah, that's where you first got started.
Yes.
Into it. Yeah. Looks like I have a very brief bit of memory with a BBC Micro being the first computer that was in the family home. So I played it a little bit, but I think I was too young to really get into it. And it wasn't until we got Archimedes, Acorn Electron, that I started actually getting a chance to play proper games. And that's when I think the gaming bug bit me.
Talking of the BBC, I remember having one at school, and we played Granny's Garden. Do you remember Granny's Garden?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
The witch would appear and freak me out. Yes. Check it out if you haven't. I have fond memories of it, like being so, really adventure. But in fact, it's very basic, I think. Steve, before I waffle on to
Mine was an old Amstrad with the green screen, not the color one, because I imagine the color one was really expensive. And I just remember because my cousin had one and being really addicted or hooked in by this old Ghostbusters game on it and the Roland Games series. Like the Roland in Time always grabbed me straight away because it had the Doctor Who theme tune as the intro and kind of this gloriously lo-fi kind of bibbly-bopped kind of retro game sound version. So that was my first little thing. I remember a GoBots game that was pretty awesome as well. And then good stuff. And you could actually transform him. You could transform him. And then after that, it was sort of. I remember I had a Game Boy for years because I was obsessed with that. Still am to a certain degree. And then Sega Mega Drive, which was my teenage obsession. And I lapsed a bit on the gaming front for God of Games again. We're both terrible sinners, but I did lapse for ages. And the part of the thing that brought me back in to a certain degree, because I was in bands and touring and stuff, so I didn't have a lot of time for games. And then my brother gave me a PlayStation 2 because he'd moved on to the next big shiny thing, and literally all I bought for that was a compilation of Sega Mega Drive games, and it brought me a great deal of joy. It was all the sort of 40 games on one disc, and every single one a classic.
Yeah, that is a good collection. Actually, that is very good.
Yeah.
I was very similar actually. Once got into the Mega Drive, that was when I really kind of was probably playing it too much, and the parents had to keep on telling me to do things other than play games. That's when I think the real obsession begins.
Would you ever know that kind of fear? I can't believe I'm about to admit to this in front of people. Do you remember when there's that fear that gaming might cause epilepsy?
Yes.
Is there no other tabloids? My mum made me play my Mega Drive with an eye patch on.
Wow!
But she still let you play it though. That's amazing.
Captain Horry sailing the seas of games.
If I'm sitting here with my Mac making the music or whatever, I've still got the eye patch on. I just can't stare at a screen without it.
Wow.
It's funny, isn't it? We're always told not sit too close to the TV.
Yeah.
And now we have VR headsets where the screen's literally in front of your eyes, and that's fine. So it's kind of funny because I was looking at looking online, what's the earliest you can play on VR headsets and stuff, and is it safe? And it looks like there's just not enough data. So there's recommended ages. They'll recommend until they're a bit older, but there's actually no evidence to suggest there's any damage to eyes, even if you let young kids play on it. But probably just limit the amount of time that they're on it. But there's not actually anything that says one way or the other, because I don't think we've had anyone grow up with that at a young age that's now got adult life with any eye problems or anything.
No.
So it's new territory, isn't it?
Fucking health time bomb. Don't tell the papers.
If I played my Spectrum for too long, my brother and my mum would turn the electricity on and off, which is very cruel from a Spectrum, because that take ages to load, and you probably couldn't save where you were today. So
that is savage. That's like the modern equivalent of having one of my mates has got an app on his phone where he can cut the internet to certain things. And he does that to his kids sometimes when his kid's just been a bit of a knob in the day. He's just and off. You could just hear this from the room.
And
immediately reconnect afters.
Part of me really wants that, but part of me thinks it's just going to cause me more stress than just.
You've got to be willing to put up the fight.
Otherwise, you get a level of escalation going on. Good stuff.
That's got me thinking more now. I'm going to think periodically and maybe chip in throughout the show. It's going to make me think of some other warnings that we got from games as kids, because there was always a phase. In that sort of 80s in America when they had the satanic panic over Dungeons and Dragons, where they thought everyone was going to be sacrificing children and drinking blood and stuff just because they wanted to play a wizard game.
Which I did, but I just did it with an eye patch on.
I'm gonna have a look up and see if I can find some others throughout the show.
There's a story I read about with Dungeons and Dragons. There was a guy that wrote his story about growing up as a kid, and he said his family didn't have a lot of money growing up, and he had to kind of scrape together what he did have. And he got old compendiums from people. He got dice, some of the stuff he found in bins, and was slowly collecting up his D&D set. And apparently his parents found it all and they threw it all on a bonfire and they burnt it all because they said it was the devil's game, because they'd read in the newspapers about it being like, oh, people that play D&D can get into demon worship, and they just destroyed all of this D&D stuff. I think. So don't feel so bad about turning off the Wi-Fi, because you haven't burned your kid's D&D set to a crisp. The other thing I was going to mention, actually, we'll talk about that Mega Drive era and things that are very different now, is the certificates of games. So I think, was it Mortal? I might be wrong, but I think Mortal Kombat was one of the first games that had an 18 rating and things like that. And I think my parents never looked at the ratings on games. Like, I had Mortal Kombat, and I don't think they're like, "Oh, was that okay to play or not?" It's like, it's just a game. I don't think they really thought too bad of it. Because if you look at like an 18 game now, if you're buying a kid a PS5 game that's an 18, that's a heck of a lot more, graphic and violent, that you think you actually might need to be careful what you let them play.
Am I misremembering that with Mortal Kombat there was a way of turning off, like, obviously there's was it Sub-Zero where he pulls the guy's skull and spine out, but you could turn that stuff off, so it wasn't quite so.
Well, the SNES version had no blood, didn't it?
It was sweat. That was sweat. It was just like they just changed it to grey, and it all just it looked awful. But the Mega Drive one, there was like a cheat you could do which would boot the blood up.
So I remember as well, it was the Wu-Tang Taste of Pain I really enjoyed on the PS1, and that had like gore in it, but you had to turn it on at the start, but there's a code in the back of the book, so you'd have to go into the book and find the code to turn like blood on, but you had to do that at the start of the game. So always had to do that. I think once you did it the first time and then saved it, your save file would be a bloody version. So that was a good one too. I like that. Cool. No, that's great. We'll move on to talking then about Lightfoot Bros Games. So where did this come about? What got you guys started, and what sort of things have you worked on?
So it's a funny old thing, Lightfoot Bros Games, because so it's generally me working with different people on different games. So even though my brother David Lightfoot, the originator of the Lightfoot Bros kind of name piece, I worked very closely with him on the first game, Mystery of Woolly Mountain. It was his story. It was kind of based on one of our bands called the Helmholtz Resonators, where we all dressed up as Victorian scientists and played like crazy electro fuzz kind of stuff. Bit psychedelic. Quite psychedelic. So, we wanted to expand it into a world. So for our second album, we did this kind of like, it was so far ahead of its time, we did this kind of like album that was also a like ebook. So you could play the songs at different points in the ebook. And it was a bit animated. It was really cool. And in the back, it had a jukebox, so you could play the whole album. And it was also a normal album on Spotify. So we'd written that, and kind of in tandem, I was starting to, I wanted to not get back into gaming, but I wanted to get back into programming. Because when I was a kid, again, thinking the spectrum, I used to try and make games in BASIC. They were terrible. But, I really enjoyed it, from typing in games in the back of magazines, all the code, to, thinking I've made my own game. You haven't. You've just basically copied something. But I just loved it, tweaking it and making it, your own. And I made a game called Cars, the Remix. I don't know why I called it Cars, the Remix. There is no sign of, or I don't remember the original Cars. And quick fun fact, in the Mystery of Woolly Mountain, you can find Cars, the Remix, the game, and play it on a Spectrum in it. And it's identical to the original version, which I still have as a tap file. But anyway, so I got the bug, and I thought I'm going to start to kind of remember how to do that kind of thing and learn Unity and just kind of get my head into that world. And lo and behold, after a successful Kickstarter back in 2017, we finally released the Mystery of Woolly Mountain in 2019 on desktop and Switch. And I was really happy. I learned a hell of a lot in that journey. And then I kind of didn't do another game for a little while. And then I'm now making two, because to catch up for that little that gap. And one of the other games I'm making, this soon to be announced, well, probably next year to be announced, Metroidvania 2D run and gun detective game. My long-standing friend Ed is doing the art for that. And with Sleepytime Village, I wanted to make another point-and-click adventure, and I knew that Steve did comics, wrote comics, drew comics, if that's the right term. And I approached him on another series that he had done called Lizard Men. And I said, I want to make Lizard Men a point-and-click game. I think it'd be a really good idea. And Steve was like, oh, no. I'm working on something else, a new graphic novel called Sleepytime Village that I think you should take a look at, as I think that would be a great point-and-click. That would fit the brief better. So that's how we've ended up here. So Lightfoot Bros Games, anyway, the origin is basically me working with different people on different games. That's kind of how it's come about. So, Lightfoot Brothers is one big family.
It's full of adopted brothers, adopted
yeah.
Lightfoot.
Exactly.
I am an adopted Lightfoot.
You're an adopted Lightfoot.
What's the other guy's name? Jack. He's now my adopted brother as well. And I work with James's brother Dave on some music stuff as well. So it really is. There is no escaping them. It's like a cult. It's like
I'll take
big
that
cult, and they make you take their surname and
Yeah.
do all sorts of unspeakable things. It's terrifying. Please help.
So what about you, Steve? You said you've done some graphic novels and things like that as well. So what sort of stuff have you worked on? So I've got here games you've worked on, but we'll broaden that to projects of any kind.
Yeah, well,
you into doing this sort of thing.
Well, I'm this sort of I've had this weird. Well, I basically I like to keep an open mind, and if someone's just trying something, I'm 9 times out of 10, if I can make the timing work up, I'm into it. And so, I've been in bands, I've been a DJ and club promoter, I've been comics artist, comics writer, and all this random tat. And just because, even a nerdy quiz host at one point as well, which is, we'd have themed pub quizzes around different sci-fi or franchises. Once we did 8 nights in Camden, sold out on the trot, doing Peep Show, which I wasn't expecting to be the big one. So if someone says, do you want to try doing a thing? It's not normally, it's sort of because it's not got, it's the alternative is, I don't watch much TV, so the alternative is just sitting here going mad on my own. So so through meeting all those, I met James through playing in bands. One of my old bands shared a bill with one of his previous bands. We shared another one shared with Helmholtz Resonators, who I thought were amazing and still do maintain are amazing. And so we knew each other through that. We knew a bunch of other people. Like I'd once got talking to a guy who turned out to be Eddie from the band Art Brute, and we'd stayed in contact. And we were drunk in my club night, one of my club nights once, and he said, he'd seen that I could draw stuff, and we did that sort of. Normally, when you're in that sort of position and everyone's tipsy and everything, and you're all musicians, it's all, we should totally form a band. And then you do one gig and split up, and it's amazing, but kind of terrible at the same time. But that changed to, we should do a comic. And so, and we did, basically, which came out in Image Comics in 2015, I want to say, and was really awesome. And then put me in a position to do another couple. And I basically did 2 books over the course of about 9 months. Did the Double D for Image Comics with Eddie, and then did a series called Transrealities, which is only just coming out soonish, some point later this year, I believe. Got to the end of that though, and I'd drawn basically 400 pages of comics, and I was sick of my art. But I still had that urge to create stuff, so I ended up writing a couple of comics. Great thing about writing them is, I'm not diminishing the role of the writer at all, because writing is bloody hard work, and when you are stuck, it is like the worst. But I could write 3 lines of description, and instead of that being a day's worth of work for me or 2 days worth of work for me, it's a day's worth of work for someone else. So suddenly it was a little bit easier. And so I ended up writing a couple of series, and for Comic House, which again is another music contact where we knew James. I don't know, like James said, I got the call out of the blue, and I literally just finished writing the script, and we had about 80-90% of the art's done for Sleepytime Village. We'd already pitched it. We've got a publisher, and so when he got in contact with me, it was kind of doing something based on an old series would be quite good, but I thought with this one coming up, it was still fresh and it was still new, and I was still excited. And it sounds slightly cynical, but I also thought, well, if we're launching this new thing that's a comic and it's also a game, suddenly that's a lot more powerful. And also the size of it, like from Sleepytime Village as a graphic novel is about 80 pages. It's more of a graphic novella, I guess. It's one short self-contained story. And with a game, there's more places you can go to than with, you can explore and create more of a world. And particularly with this, where we had to keep it to quite a short self-contained story. Sleepytime Village, the game is, a self-contained story, but you don't have to go through it in the path that I've set out as a writer of a comic. You can go off on these little side bits and you can have a look around the world, and we can expand it, because obviously the expectation of a game is very different to the expectation of a comic, and we can play around with that a little bit, and that's what kind of got me quite excited. And plus, being able to do the music for it and being able to create this whole the comic is one piece of this world, and being able to expand on that with sound and visuals and moving parts. I mean, my daughter created a bunch of the characters that are in it. She designed the visuals for them. So for her, this has been going on since she's been about 5. She's 10 now. So for her, she's had the excitement of seeing this stuff that she's drawn at home turn into a book, which was already quite exciting. And now they're moving, bouncing, dancing things on a video game, and it's been quite exciting for her. But I think she thinks it's normal, and it's like trying to explain to her, this isn't how things work for not all kids get to do cool stuff like this.
There's something about that idea of things being I guess like transmedium, so something that can incorporate a variety of different elements that are all sort of linked via a sort of creation. It's really cool. I've really enjoyed listening to you guys actually talking about bands and stuff, because that's something that's a huge part of my life, albeit the last 10 years or so. It has sort of suffered quite a lot because all the other members have now got kids, and even though I've toured with 2 kids being very small and they didn't have kids at all, but we're not bitter about any of that whatsoever. But that's one of the things that we set out for this project that we do, is we had this real thing against singers, because all the bands we've been in previously, the singer was the one that kind of ended up leaving, and then the band would break up. So this time around we're like, right, it's going to be an instrumental project, and we're going to be really pretentious. There's going to be a "the" in the title, and how else can we make this really pretentious? So we decided we were going to do something similar. So we wrote a story. We have this short sci-fi film that plays. We've made a comic, but we've never done anything with it. We're real guilty of just sort of letting it sit for the last sort of 10 years. But there's something about that transmedium stuff. I just love it. It's so cool.
I mean, I found after, partly why I've not had the time to draw any books, like I had to take out a certain amount of, when I had my first child, it was quite a shock as to how much time being a father actually takes, and a lot of that fed into the creation of the book. So I was able to do I was able to do quite cool stuff, like there was one point where I got on a plane on a Friday, flew to Berlin, went straight into rehearsal, kept at a friend's house, played a gig on the Saturday night, supporting Suede, who are one of my all-time favorite bands. I know, right? Go to a club in Berlin afterwards, hang out, have a party, meet a guy called the Shredder, and amazing, and fly home with a hangover the next day. So I could do stuff like that, but back when I was younger and I'd go on tour for 6 weeks with no days off for 50 quid a night, sleeping in a van, I can't do that anymore. I'd love to, but, well, no, I'd invest in hotels. But
the idea is still good. But
the idea is good. But,
I don't know. There's a little part of me that would still give it a bloody good go.
Oh yeah.
There's something about sleeping in a van. That was my death metal band days of actually doing similar things. You go on tour for 2-3 weeks, no days off, no petrol money, but they'd throw a couple of beers at you, and you'd wake up, someone had been sick on the other person, and you're like, this At the time, horrendous, but looking back
Yeah.
on it, it's those are
And
the
now
best
you
memories.
look so fondly. Oh,
You'd just be sitting there
wonderful.
and packing it up, hoping that because I had a girlfriend at the time, but you'd be hoping that someone else in the band would cop off, so you'd get a bit of extra space in the van.
Yeah,
With our stinky mattress and all our gear in there. If the venue wouldn't let you store your gear in the venue overnight, you'd be stuffed because you got we had congas and flipping amps and drum kit and everything, and 5 of us.
Yeah.
Squeezed in. I've got some terrible stories, but I'm not sure how appropriate they are. just
good times.
Not for any dodgy behaviour, just more the swearing they need to have the full effect. So I just realised how that sounded.
Exactly. Yes, it is life on the road.
Yeah.
All right. So let's move on to talk about Sleepytime Village. Actually, that's where we're here to talk about. I think we'll start off if I play the trailer for everyone. Be nice. I'm going to try and do the old share screen and make sure I actually put share screen properly. Let's see.
We have the technology.
Will I be sharing the right screen? Okay, I'm going to allow sound. Oh, that's this screen. So I'm going to change my screen back over. Hang on. This is very
Look
smooth.
at this.
Look at
It's seamless.
I shared the wrong screen.
Seamless.
Yeah.
What was that folder I just saw there? Triangle?
Right. Let's play the trailer now.
Let's turn it up, Triangle.
I do love the sort of the inspiration for the comic stuff there, where it just sort of comes up with these nice little strips. When you came up with the concept, was one of your children watching Teletubbies?
In the night garden and Teletubbies. And
oh my god!
In the night garden.
Moon and Me.
Moon and Me. Jeez, yeah. Between that, Iggle Piggle, the Ninky Nonk, and Jesus.
Don't get me started. There's a character from Moon and Me called Collywobble who still to this day shits me up. Sorry, I did that. I swear. Sorry.
No,
that's all right.
where we are. Our content is not ticked for children.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's swears in the game as well. But yeah, I was watching Moon and Me with my youngest, who was transfixed, and seeing this creepy, horrible clown creature with his cold, looked like a '60s Cyberman, but a clown, and stop motion movement as well. It was the most terrifying thing ever, and I was just horrified. But my child was delighted, but I was. It was terrifying. And it's just like leaning over to the wife and just saying, God, just imagine waking up and you're in that bed with that staring at you. And that was the whole genesis of the book, and then the game was just that one throwaway comment of, that thing is terrifying. Imagine waking up next to Collywobble. Because he's in the night garden. I actually kind of got really obsessed with it. I was really into In the Night Garden. It was I can watch I have opinions on the characters and everything. I've got favorites. It was I could see how that worked. We saw the live show, and it was just like, it was a delight. Whereas Moon and Me is just flipping freaky, man. It's
just before Tim brings us back on, this is another thing that we're quite good at, is just derailing, going straight into a tangent. This is the first time I've had a tangent about In the Night Garden, though. But while we're on to that, I know you were sort of saying that it's a little bit freaky and a little bit sinister and stuff. And there was some, I'm sure it's some like Reddit post or Reddit thread.
I was going to mention this as well.
Oh wait, dude, I'm going to beat you to the punch.
No, you do it.
I'm sure it's something about Iggle Piggles, or not Iggle Piggle. Yeah, it is Iggle Piggle, isn't it? The blue guy at the beginning. As he sails off, this is his death or something, and then everything you see after that is how he sees the afterlife.
I heard it's like the boat is limbo, and he's floating through limbo, and it's his pre-death hallucinations. He's dying in that boat, and this is his mind unleashing everything, which puts a whole
I love
new
it.
context on the whole Iggle Piggle and the Tiddle episode, which I can't look at in the same way anymore.
Tom,
Same thing as one I saw, which was like I think it was an Amazon review of a In the Night Garden DVD box set. But the person reviewed it as if it was like a David Lynch surreal, like substantial horror, and it's like how the garden is like the afterlife, and what's the little guy called? There's Iggle Piggle.
Paka.
I don't think I've ever actually seen it. I've just seen bits of it. But they're like, oh, he's like a tumor-ridden dwarf that like goes around the forest with like a moveless smile. And I think Upsy Daisy is like meant to be the angel of death, but it's a long one. But it's done really serious. It's just an Amazon review for the DVD box set, and that kind of did around.
About the Maka bit.
that would explain a lot, wouldn't it?
Oh my god!
It is really. There's so many kids' TV shows that are innocent enough until like you look at them through any other lens. It's like this is really quite messed up in places. It's just like that's really weird.
I mean,
so, definitely.
That's why we ended up enlisting my daughter in sort of designing the characters, because she was drawing all these characters, and it was like, well, I need something that's going to appeal to kids. And sorry, just in the comment about Mr. Absolutely. But yeah, we needed for this convincing children's TV style characters that would be really appealing to kids, but flipping terrifying for adults. I mean, like my daughter, she was between the age of 3 and 5 at the time, and one of the characters is like a kind of paper doll with a flipping hole in its head, and cold dead eyes.
And interestingly enough, in the demo, there's a hidden Easter egg thing, or one of the puzzles that you don't have to do, but if you do it, it shows you the original drawings of Steve's daughter that all the villages are based on, which is quite cool. I thought
that's really cool.
Really good.
It's funny because she's like quite a focused. She's 10, but she draws all the time, and she's really good. It sounds like I'm doing the whole nauseating smug parent thing, but she is actually good at all, because she spends so much time on it. And if you compare, like, it's really mad. We did WAS a couple of weeks ago, and seeing people playing it and solving that puzzle, and seeing these old, very much kids drawings compared to what she does now, where it's, still kids drawings, but really sophisticated kids drawings. It's just it's like, so fast.
It may have been while I sort of dipped off to sort out my youngest earlier, but with the concept of Sleepytime Village, has that been sort of discussed as to how that came to fruition, the sort of story and the art style?
So the story and the art, I mean, from a story point of view, once I had that notion of collywobble and waking up in sort of in the night garden or something, I basically, the previous comics I'd started working with a guy called Ken Reynolds, who's worked on the games and on some of the writing as well, or has driven a lot of the writing, to be fair, for the game. And because he'd helped, he'd been the letterer on the previous comic, I was like, Ken, I've got a new idea for a comic. He's like, okay, what? I said, it's like a version of Life on Mars, but instead of waking up in the 70s, he wakes up in the night garden. He's like, great, that's a tagline. What's the actual story? And I was like, and then this, and then, that's still, blah, what's the story? And he kept prodding me. And I was just thinking aloud, it's just this stream of consciousness into a messenger chat where he and I were talking, and he was prodding me to work it out in a more sensible way. And then so Ken took the editor chair and kept poking at me, and I kept throwing ideas at him, and he kept throwing ideas back until this sort of story developed. And I was quite keen on doing the kind of classic. I hadn't done the classic 3-act structure because the previous series had been a 6-issue part, and I'd been structuring that slightly differently. So I sort of had in mind that I wanted to do that and followed that. And so there's this whole story about, and it's throwing into it's throwing some actual real life experiences into it, but without having ever actually woken up in the night garden. And it's that whole thing of trying to became about this whole thing about trying to balance parenthood and work and a creative life, and kind of pulling all that together, and how you kind of make that work. And and rediscovering that sort of joy of childhood creativity. Because you sit with small kids, and there's no, when you're an adult, it's really, really easy. And James, I think I'm sure you'll agree that, but sometimes you put your barriers in front of yourself. There's always a reason you can't do this, or that's going to be silly, or people might think I look like a twat. And kids don't give a shit; they just do. And I think that's the most. As much as I say, I'll say yes to anything. There's still those little. A part of me is doing that as trying to get out of that adult thing of putting barriers up and stopping myself before I even start because it might go wrong, and so it became about a whole bunch of that sort of thing, and it just sort of developed and developed and developed, and mainly down to Ken. And then when it came to the art, I wasn't going to have time to draw it, and I knew I needed someone who was versatile because I wanted to have this really clear distinction between the real life sort of human elements of the story and this children's storybook world. And I'd helped a friend of a friend pitch a comic, and really enjoyed their book. And the art was by a woman called Yulia Lapko, who's Ukrainian, and really brilliant and versatile. And I really loved a lot of her art. So, I was like, do you fancy doing some sample pages? Would you be up for this? Don't know if you've got. Oh, there we go. The Glass Wall, available now, kids.
Oh wow.
She's be careful because there's a lot of.
That's all right.
W pages.
Anyway,
There we go.
There we go. Look at that. We did. Julia and I did joke about the fact that given the protagonist of Sleepytime Village is a kind of messed up midlife crisis, 30-something, and we're on. The Glass Wall is about a bunch of much more glamorous but messed up late 20-somethings that. Maybe she's got a niche there with kind of glum-looking blokes having troubles, but it was a great book, and she was clearly great, and she was up for it. She did a couple of sample pages; they were amazing, and so we just went full steam ahead with the book. And when it came, James got in contact about the game. It kind of made sense to build on what was in the game because we wanted that uniform look. But obviously, there's certain things like. We were having these early discussions where I wanted everything to look very flat and storybook wise, and James was like, no, we've got to have some. It's different. It's a game,
depth, please,
and some depth. And totally right. It took me a little while to get my head because sometimes my little brain's sort of like.
Because the graphic novel. The two worlds, like if you play the demo, if you saw the trailer there, you'll see that when Rufus is in the real world, it's this very blue, black kind of, vibe. And then the juxtaposition of that being this very flat, colorful, like cutout style in the village. But as Steve pointed out, the first version, it just was too flat. It just didn't. Still needed a bit more detail because people are going to be playing this game on big screens, and it just needed that extra edge. But I would say, pretty much still, it does fit the aesthetic, right?
Oh, totally. I mean, it was very much from those things where as soon as you see it done properly, it's like, oh yeah, all right, I was being an idiot there. And especially when we were seeing people playing it, because the fact is, because it's so colourful, and Rufus, particularly at the beginning when he's, spoiler alert, the colours for the real life stuff changes, his emotional mood changes as we get through the book. As soon as we saw it with all the colours, it is blatantly obvious he does not belong in the village, in comic or book form. I mean, it's basically, there was a sort of Christmas Carol type thing. When you get the demo bit, you are playing a man who's clearly a bit of a twit, and I think, can we call him obnoxious, James? Are we allowed to call our protagonist obnoxious?
I had someone.
He's trying his best, but
I had someone comment basically saying, I'm not going to back your Kickstarter because I just want to torture the main character.
Wow.
I was like, yeah, I know. And I
they want to play the game to see him suffer in the.
He's torturing himself.
Yeah.
I replied and said there is a redemption arc. There is a redemption arc, but still,
I think that kind of story is always compelling, isn't it? Because I think even when you've got a main protagonist, like say, he's a bit of a dick or something, there's part of you that wants them to be good, and you think, oh, if you just start making good life choices, you'll be a likable character, and you kind of get behind those sorts of characters sometimes. Just kind of
and throughout the book and the game, you know, like there are flashbacks to his upbringing, different points in his life that, you know, give clues as to why he might be a bit of a dick, or why he's, you know, not in a like really like deep dark way, but just kind of life kind of thing, you know, and it's really, and thus, as you know, the story unfolds in both forms, you do feel sorry and, you know, applaud the growth, if you will.
Yeah, but that's I think quite important for those kind of characters, because there's, you know, some of, I think maybe the one character, and I always get chastised for this, where that didn't happen for me, was Alan Wake. I love the game, love the story. It is a Stephen King novel, really, but he's just a knob, and he's a knob constantly. And you get to the end, and he's still a knob. There's not a huge amount about Alan Wake that is likable, but the thing that draws you into that place is the story and the universe. And I am intrigued by the second game, but I'm as you can tell, a bit of a physical media whore, so I'm kind of boycotting it because they're not going to release it on a disc. But I guess in a contrast to that, in a movie arc where I really liked it, and again I get chastised for this as well. People say no, it's a crap film. Was Steven Spielberg's War of the Worlds.
I like that.
Tom Cruise's character at the beginning, absolute deadbeat, the kind of guy that you're like, yeah, you don't deserve your kids. And then by the end of it, spending all that time in an extreme situation, he becomes Father of the Year by, you know, really stepping up. And you're like, yeah, I'm a big fan of a redemption arc. So
it's the Christmas Carol thing, isn't it? I mean, there's a reason why that story is, you know, it was a bit of a touch point, but it's a reason why as a story it's so successful in so many different mediums and so on, because, you know, Scrooge is the alpha asshole. And, you know, admittedly you don't see too much of him as the as the much better version, but you know, it's still, there's a clear contrast between who he is at the beginning of the book and who he is at the end of it. And I guess that's what we're trying to do with the game and the book is, you know, it's look at the motivation, understand why, what, you know, what's the causes. You know, I think, I mean, yeah, I mean, it's really easy, you know, particularly from the first act, to make the sort of snap judgment, but actually you dig more into it, and it's supposed to set up a bit of twittery.
The thing I like about, I've just played a bit of it as well, is the fact that you can choose what you want to, like, you can choose like how you're going to act, how you're going to react to certain scenarios, which is quite funny, because if you put like, I think one of them I put like the anger, and he just told him to fuck off. I just cracked up. To be honest, I thought that was brilliant. I was laughed at that.
The guy trying to collect the charity outside.
Yeah. Everyone's wanted to say that at some point. Anyway.
But there's a whole thing with wanting to. We had a huge discussion about swearing for over many. You know, I had the same conversation with Ken when working on the book, and then James and I had it with this, where, you know, do we include swearing? And I was very much in the camp of, as soon as you put a human being in the night garden, you're not going to use any other words. But also, you know, it's funny, the contrast of this great big happy sun with a smiling face, and these bouncing buildings that look all happy, and these winding green paths, and the F word, the ghost of Mary Whitehouse. After, she can be displeased, that's fine.
It was very funny, and, you know, like we could have done like, you know, The Good Place and made it whenever he swears it comes out nicely or something, you know, because he's in the village. But then that wouldn't work for the real world, though, where he does swear sometimes, and it would keep me up at night. This kind of like, are we cutting off an audience who don't like swearing? You know, if we have swearing in, and that's why I've ended up putting in the you can turn the swearing off. But as Steve will note, when we were at WASD, I think out of all the people who played it and were presented with that choice, only one person chose non-swearing. So there's a slice.
And
of
it was quite a young boy, wasn't he? He was like sort of teenage boy, which I was thought, when I was a teenage boy, it was all about. I was.
Well,
I'm not a teenager. I'm still giggling
some
over
kids would play it, and I'd be like, there's swearing in it. They're like, yeah. And I was like, right, fine.
Just turn around and said, "Fuck, Granddad."
And how do you find watching people play it then? So I was going to ask a question about how do you sort of manage I suppose in terms of the puzzles and how to progress in the game, how do you sort of manage the difficulty curve? Because I find whenever I do something like that, I tend to do like puzzles and stuff and things, is that making something that's hard enough that makes people have to think about it and it's not immediately obvious, but also you don't want people to get stuck and then get frustrated. So how have you found that process and balancing it? And did you gain much from watching lots of people play it? And say, like, did people get stuck on different bits that you didn't expect them to, and that sort of thing?
So it was a really fantastic, trial by fire kind of thing at WAS, because everyone, pretty much 95% people who sat down to play it completed the demo, which is about a half an hour experience, right? Which is great for, the game, the people who are investing in the game because they like what they're doing. But obviously, for bums on seats speed, it's not fantastic. But I didn't care. We were just so happy that we watched people play, and they followed pretty much the same. They were guided correctly throughout it. And in fact, the only bits that people got stuck on that we then tweaked was like, which this latest demo is now all WASD approved, if you will. Or whatever the words are, was that somewhat like it would take ages for people just to click on a box that I thought was obvious to get an object that you need, but people wouldn't see it enough. Or they wouldn't see, even though I put in a whole, like these leaves come out of, when you wake up in the village, these leaves kind of fall out and the camera pans to like stairs going up to the ceiling. And I did that because people kept not realizing there were stairs over there and you could go up. So I really, really labored that, and still people weren't doing it. So now in the latest demo, if you click on 10 things and you haven't yet gone upstairs, he will suddenly go, I wonder what's upstairs, and it will pan over to the thing. But to fully answer the question, basically, I think we really, in the demo, we've pretty much got that perfect level of guiding and not getting people stuck so that they can complete the demo, they can get out of Mimi's house. In Mystery of Woolly Mountain, I think, some of the puzzles were maybe a bit too hard. And we were very, 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 it was very important to not have any moon logic. So we really try to make things obvious, but not obvious, but just not ridiculous, but still not boring. So, yes, I don't want you to use the chicken with the door because that makes no, to open it, that makes no sense at all. But, I don't want it to be a key either because that's too kind of boring, if you know what I mean? So, yeah, I think the levels are right. Obviously, we do have that freedom of he is in a crazy world, but I still don't want to make the puzzles like ridiculous. So it all makes narrative sense, right? It ties back to the story, and it's all stuff that links back. Some of the games are quite based on child games. It's sort of like it comes back to that point of rediscovering the joy of some of that stuff. Do you know what I mean?
With when you were talking earlier about the sort of discrepancy between wanting it to be flat versus having a bit of depth to it, were there some other sort of artistic choices that you sort of put forward, James, when you were sort of reading the graphic novel that you thought, yeah, we might need to have a little tinker with this?
Well, again, spoiler alert, but I don't think it really is a spoiler alert. All the villages only say their name in the graphic novel, which obviously presents challenges if you're making a game and you can't talk to anybody basically in this village because they only say their name, right? So what we've done that I'm really pleased about and what I'm excited about for those who find the novel first and then the game it will completely expand that world. And if you do the game first and then the novel, you've got, they complement each other perfectly. But we've introduced extra areas and characters that exist in the village for brilliant reasons that you can converse with. So a problem led to a brilliant solution that I'm so excited about, that actually even opened up the mythos of this whole village and why it exists. It kind of makes me think about Lost when it was good, right? And how you just find a new layer of something which kind of gives it a whole kind of extra level. So anything that I was presented with where I was like, I don't know how this, this might stifle a game, but works brilliantly in the novel, we've been able to really expand on it. So and I'm not going to spoil that, because it's like that's one of my favorite bits, to be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to get a bit. Yeah, I mean, there's a certain amount of compromise because it's a different medium. But again, like James says, it makes narrative sense and it complements the story. Do you know what I mean? But there's enough brains. Well, I say enough brains. I mean, we've probably got half of one between us, and then there's Ken, who's mega brain. But normally 9 times out of 10 we'll find a solution, and sometimes it comes like that, and sometimes it takes a little bit of thought. But because obviously if you go back to the source material, all those children's TV characters where the only word they say is their name, which is
but something we have forgotten is the ominous narrator, which we do have, like all those like Derek Jacobi in The Night Garden and whomever else it is in those other Moon and Me and stuff. We have our own one who you can talk to. Well, you can't talk to. He kind of chimes in when he wants, this narrator. And he's very bouncy, almost rhyming words, but an underlying level of menace
sinister, isn't it?
to him as well, just to keep it on the creepy side. And again, at WAS, that really again made me so happy was everyone was slightly unsettled from playing it. They'd be like, that was it's quite creepy, and I'm like, good.
I like the creepiness, but also people were laughing in the right places, which is also really nice to see when you've sort of because it's quite weird when you're working on it, right? You become this little self-contained unit, and you've sort of it's like touring with bands. By the time you go on start on a tour and you're just normal, and you get back and you've got so many stupid in jokes and references and whatever that nobody understands a word you're talking about as a collective, and there's that risk that between the two of us what we find funny might not necessarily translate. But so the sweet relief of seeing complete strangers laughing at the right jokes was just
do you know that I could this might just be me going off on another tangent now, but there was recently, and I am going somewhere with this, there was recently a documentary on Gold about Bottom. So they had Adrian Edmondson talking a lot about the writing process for Bottom and why was it so successful when it is literally just slapstick comedy of two guys who should just not exist beating the shit out of each other generally. But the way that they wrote the characters sounds very similar to how you guys sort of have kind of fed off each other's kind of like artistic vibes, and that you're talking about being a unit, a contained unit. That is effectively what they did. They kind of shut themselves away, wrote the series, laughed their asses off for 6 weeks while they did it, and then presented it to Channel 4 or BBC. I can't remember which one it was on now. And they kind of were like, yeah, okay. You're like, really? All right, let's do this. And they wrote each other's characters as well. So hearing sort of Steve talk about the birth of the graphic novel, and then James coming in and kind of being like, I like that, but it needs to sort of tinker a little bit. We need to change that here and make this work for this sort of area. I don't know why that's reminded me of that. So
that's cool.
I think the nice thing about any sort of collaboration really is, if I'm a lot of time, I mentioned working with Dave, James' brother Dave on music. Dave's my publisher for stuff for TV, sort of sync stuff and so on. And when I'm doing that, I'm working in isolation, and it's great and it's fun and it's really satisfying. But there's no surprises, unless I totally completely random elements into it. And 9 times out of 10, if it's to a deadline, I haven't got time to throw surprises at myself. I've just got to efficiently get on with it. And the thing I always find with collaborating with other people is that they bring themselves to it and something different to it, and it's something that I wouldn't necessarily do myself, and that's what makes it exciting. Like, you know, the friend of mine I write songs with at the moment, you know, she writes a lot of melodies that are completely different to what I would do. James with the game brings in this whole influence that I wouldn't necessarily know or to think of, and brings this whole other mindset to it. And I just quite, you know, even when you're working on comics, you know, Yulia and Katia, who drew my previous comic, you know, when I'm writing the script, I would have something in mind. You know, I would know in my mind how I would draw it. So when you see how they take your words and interpret it into something completely different and mind-bogglingly brilliant and slightly annoyingly better than I would have done, you know, it's amazing. It's like the exciting bit where you get the pages back, and you know, it's like James sent me a screenshot today of one of the later scenes, and we've talked about it, and in my head I have my little vision of what it would look like, and this thing pops into my inbox, and it's different to what I was expecting, but better and brilliant, and it's really exciting because it's like this has come from, you know, an idea I had sitting in my pants upstairs trying to fall asleep, and now it's this other thing that other people have added their thing to and turned it into something, you know, different. It's without something too, you know, silly about it, it's the exciting bit of the process for me. It's that.
Totally.
No, absolutely. I think bouncing off ideas of other people as well is always a good way of growing an idea into something tangible that you then you know or contribute different parts to, and people think about things that you might not have ever considered. And yeah, like say, especially with artwork and stuff, like I've kind of got I'm working on a game at the moment, and a friend of mine's doing the artwork, and I'm like describing what I want a room to look like, and then he'll draw something. I'm like, that looks way better than I thought. And it's better what I could have drawn, because I can't really draw at all. But no, working with someone doing the artwork for something you've got the idea for, yeah, it's definitely an interesting process.
So Tim, I just wanted to get up the actual Kickstarter page because we are so close, and there is some great stuff that you like. I've just seen some of the stuff that on the higher tab. They're so good. So obviously,
so there you go. That's how you do a screen share. Just for anyone watching, you immediately bring it up. You don't show your desktop.
Normally does it
half the wrong screen. So
he normally does it. Yeah. So
that's how you're supposed to do it.
They're so close to the. We've got 5 days now. But some of the
close.
Yeah, and then we'll get to the where are we here? Your awards. Like, they are brilliant. I can scroll and get a better look of them here. So obviously a digital game, your name in the credits, digital soundtrack, the big physical box. That's right up your street, Ollie. That is.
Oh, the lovely
USB to the game on it. Look at this physical style, retro style manual. Alex, just look at that. It's amazing. You got CD, no game. Wish you were here. Villager cards, physical art of the Sleepytime Village. That'd be brilliant as well. Pin badges, a map, a business cards, physical tally ho, real world paper. That's amazing. Signatures that you can get them to sign it, your name enrolled in the census. Achieve immortality in the brokers in the cemetery, your name on it. Receive a personalized message from Rufus. Play through with a game dev. Receive a blue. These are ridiculous. These are amazing, but like bundles.
Have we got the? I've put on an add-on now as well that I will. I don't have much time to draw very very often anymore, but we've put in an add-on and I will draw. I've opened 2 commission slots basically to draw whatever anyone wants, within reason and the law.
Law, yeah.
Yeah, so we've added them on because I just thought, do you know what, sod it. You know, it'll be nice to draw something new, and I always prefer working when someone else is poking me to do something anyway. So yeah, we've added those on as well.
Yeah, but yeah, I agree. Those are some crazy cool packs.
Yeah, incredible.
I do love me some physical stuff, so that ticks a big box.
It literally a big box.
Yes, it even says it on there, just a big box. I'm all in.
Yeah, I like the shiny stuff. It makes me sad that I've had to reduce a little bit because, you can't see the rest of this room, but there's records and books and Blu-rays and more books and comics and toys and guitars and synthesizers and stuff. It's like, I need room to work. I'm going through one of my purges at the moment where I just get to the point where it's such a privileged wine, isn't it? I've just got to get rid of stuff, but I do need to get rid of some stuff because it's driving me nuts.
Cool. Right, we'll go on then to some questions. I'm conscious of time now, coming up to the end of the show, but we have got some questions we've starred. All from David Newland Music. So thanks for asking your questions, David. I'll go for the first one here. So we've got, as a musician, someone who works in movies, I love sound design. Would love to know your process for finding, creating sound effects in video games. My dream job has and is to work in/on a game. So, what's the process around sound design?
I mean, I would say so. Steve does all the music for Sleepytime Village and provides me with what I pester him for. So obviously, if I'm playing the demo over and over, and I'm like, when he walks on the carpet, I need a better sound that differentiates from when he walks on the wood, for example, or I need this sound or that sound, and then Steve finds it.
Sometimes it's finding a pre-existing sample. Sometimes like it's me walking on my floor and recording the sound of that or hitting things. Sometimes I'm sampling stuff. Sometimes there was something, I can't remember what it was, but I was dicking around with a synth. David, I've got 14, and it's I agree with you. If I didn't also have synths and samplers and drum machines and records, so sometimes it's sampling and foleying and messing around. So sometimes it's messing around with a synthesizer just to get that kind of weird sort of sound. In terms of approaching the actual music, very much, the influences are children's TV themes and horror movie soundtracks, and as well as bringing a bit of my own baggage and stuff to it, because they both use similar instrumentation, and it's very easy as a consequence to go from this sort of quite nice, gentle kind of sleepy time, happy time music to just chuck a Discord in, and suddenly it just changes the mood. And I've again with that, it's sort of, I'll watch the scene. James will normally do me a little video, and I'll have a little watch of that and let the mood. You know what I mean? Just sometimes I'll be totally thrown now. What was I saying? I've got David being very kind in the comments, just totally thrown. I mean, thank you, David. It is a bit of both, David. Sometimes, like we had to do a crowd scene once, and I couldn't get a crowd scene, but if it's raining, that's really easy because I'll just stick a mic out the window, on a rainy day. But yeah, so just throwing all those influences in, I like things to move about a bit. It was interesting because when we first started, I didn't really wasn't sure how long the pieces should be, and we had this little loop, and it drove me mental, and I could see how again it was just playing it and realizing that actually this has got to be longer and go to different places. So it's quite nice where I'm used to doing quite concise short pieces to be able to just stretch out and have stuff that evolves and changes and shifts. And
there's a I think Hacks and Cloak did the soundtrack for Midsummer, and there was a whole section where Ari Aster and him were sort of talking about the soundtracks and talking about the sort of noises and just the pieces of music that he wanted for these scenes, but he couldn't quite depict the end. He said the end is just this sequence, and it starts here and it ends here, and it's about 9 minutes, and I don't want it to be broken up. I just want this to feel like one whole section. So he ended up writing the Fire Temple piece of music to this end piece of thing, and the reason it fits so perfectly for every moment is because he wrote it to the images, and he's like, right, I can bring these levels up here, I can then change the tone. It was so that's drawing comparison to all these things tonight. It's wonderful.
It's quite It is quite fun. So it's harder with a game, I guess, because you can't necessarily time the dialogue. But there's on a related to know that there's an amazing video of Angelo Badalamenti and David Lynch talking about how he did the Twin Peaks music, and how Lynch is describing to him what he wants, and he's saying, and then it goes into this mood, and Badalamenti's playing what's now the familiar Twin Peaks music, and David Lynch is kind of inching him on, just saying, just keep going higher and higher and higher, and then it lends into the kind of explosive bit of that theme where it goes into the big, beautiful, floaty bit. And absolutely, David, he was a genius. And if you don't know he did an amazing album with Tim Booth of James and Bernard Butler, which is embarrassingly how I first came across Angelo Badalamenti's work, because I was still am a big Bernard Butler fan. So yes, David, if you don't know that, I recommend it.
Myself and David were literally talking today about Twin Peaks. So yeah, it's a deep love. It's a deep love.
Yeah. It used to scare the crap out of me as a kid, but then to be fair, certain elements of it still do.
And then so does In the Night Garden. So
Yeah. I feel I sound like I'm just walking around scared of the telly. I'm not.
We've got a couple more questions then from David. We've got how long did this project take, and did you have a time frame, or say it's done when it's done?
So obviously it's in flight, this game, and I have put a kind of line in the sand, and it's going to come out Halloween 25 by hook or by crook, because I don't want I know the story, and it will evolve, but we've worked so hard. I'd probably say a couple of years we've been working on getting this demo, the foundation of the game right, and now it feels as I can just, kind of just build on that. It's like I built the foundation, now I can build all the floors, if you will. So that's my vision. It'll be next Halloween next year. So touch wood, but I don't want to just work on it for too long. I want to, make it great and then make another game, basically. Yeah. I don't want to spend years. I think I can see how to get it done, how we want it to be. I played a great game called The Excavation of Hobbs Barrow. Don't know if you've played that. It's a point and click adventure. I recommend it. Came out 2 years ago. And that, to me, it's very Midsummer, Wicker Man style game set back in like the 1840s or something, or early 1900s. I can't remember. But to me, it's not too long. It's not too short. But it's really narrative driven. It's a great story that is very satisfying, and you want to buy it and put it on your shelf. It doesn't go on for ages. It doesn't there's no crafting. You know what I mean? It's a story, and that's what we want to get across with this.
Excellent.
Yeah. And then last one from David got here. Question for Steve is: what are your favourite VSTs?
Yes, there's a man who's happy about this question.
Oh, do you know what I mean? Yes. Okay. So, it no worries. It depends on what job I'm particularly working on. So my favorite synth is Arturia's Pigments. I adore that because it's so powerful with what you can do in it. It's absolutely amazing. And right now I'm a big fan of the Universal Audio stuff, so I've subscribed to whatever their subscription piece is, where you get a shed load of plugins. So I really like the Pultec EQ copy. I think that on a kick drum is the greatest sound in disco, or any of its derived works. And I quite like that new Transit by Baby Audio. That's quite a lot of fun. I'm quite enjoying that. And I just trying to think of one more to finish off. But stuff that I use on everything. Oh, brain blank. There's enough to work with. There's just but whatever does a cool job. There's always my favorite plugin is always the next one, because it's the problem with them, isn't it? They're always sort of.
That's a good answer. Yeah, your favorite one's always the next one.
Yeah, because
that applies to many things, doesn't it?
Yeah. Do you know what I mean? The next game's the next one. The best comic's the best one. It's so. But yeah, I do if it was transit, David, you was just saying in the comments that you hadn't heard of it. It's worth a look. It's designed specifically for it's really cool. It's designed specifically for transitioning from different bits of songs into the other, and it's fun. Lots of tweakability.
Excellent.
Tweakability.
Cool. Well,
Nice.
Thank you very much for your time this evening and talking to us about games and music and Sleepytime Village. Thanks everyone for watching. Please do go check out the Kickstarter and all those different perks we looked at. There's some great stuff there. And is there anything you guys would like to plug before we go off? Anywhere we can follow you on social media or any other things you want to plug?
I mean, look, we have a Discord. Go to lightfootbrosgames.com where all the links for everything, the old game, this game, Discord, all the socials, which is Lightfoot Bros TM. That's the handle. But please go to lightfootbrosgames.com to check out more stuff. And yes, please do back the Kickstarter. We're so close.
And then for me, it's I'm mostly using Insta and Blue Sky at the moment. So it's stephen.horry.besky on Blue Sky. And it's at Stephen Horry Makes Stuff on Instagram. And, which is the amount of stuff that James and I have tagged each other on. If you go to lightfootbros.tm, it's bound to lead to the other one.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, David, you're my new favourite viewer ever. I look forward to listening to your stuff, mate.
Yeah, David's got, a lot of our jingles are all done by David. He's become sort of our unofficial sort of music composer. Composer for our intros and stuff. So
amazing.
Great stuff. All right, thanks very much everyone for watching. Thanks guys for being on. You've been amazing guests, so happy to have you back on again. If you've got any other stuff to plug in future, you're more than welcome to come back on. All right, thanks for watching everybody. I'm gonna do the hand wave thing.
Do the hand wave.
Oh.